Coming up on 2.5 Geeks, we're going to be looking at the flagship Windows phone from Nokia, the Lumia 900. Then we're going to look at a tiny, tiny PC and some really, really expensive SSDs, contest details, and more coming right up.
The bar has been set wicked fast. It rocked in the benchmarks. We're going to up the ante a little bit.
Processing power, I kind of understand this.
Hey, welcome back to 2.5 Geeks. I'm Ayaz Akhtar alongside Dave Altavilla and Marco Chiappetta. How's it going, guys?
Good, and you, my friend?
I am good. Marco, are you good as well?
I'm good. I think I'm fighting off some kind of crazy allergies right now, but I'm good. I apologize if I sound a little nutty.
Now, Dave's fighting off periods of voguing. Now, his video may freeze for a second. He's simply dancing. It's a very odd thing he does. Do not panic. Your system is fine.
Striking a pose, that's all I'm doing.
You just did it right there. It's almost like you did it on command. I have no idea how you did that. It was almost like a ventriloquist dummy. Easy for me to say. It's a hard word to say.
Who are you calling a dummy?
Oh, I would never say anything like that, at least while we were recording. Anyway, let's get to what we talk about on this show. We normally talk about knitting. I know the knitting technology is very exciting. No, let's talk
knitting
about...
and other things like Cheese Whiz, perhaps.
Right.
We discuss, yep.
Maybe forget that. Let's try something completely different. Let's talk about, I don't know, hardware. There's a new phone out there from Nokia. It's supposed to be the flagship Windows phone. Nokia is the partner for Microsoft. So the Nokia Lumia 900, this is supposed to be the first real Windows phone, the first real smartphone, according to Nokia, because they call the other stuff a beta test. Dave, what did Hot Hardware think of the Lumia 900?
Well, you know, that was some pretty aggressive marketing on the folks, on the part of Nokia. But actually, yeah, this is quite a departure, I guess, than perhaps what you're used to from the Windows Phone experience of old. The Lumia 900 by Nokia. It is, you know, fairly close in terms of hardware specifications to traditional Windows Phone devices from lots of other manufacturers. In this case, they've actually amped up the processor to 1.4 gigahertz single-core Snapdragon, but still that single-core Snapdragon processor under the hood, a gig of internal ROM, 512 meg of RAM, and 16 gig in internal storage, not expandable. It does sport Windows Phone 7.5, otherwise known as the Mango release, and it also supports LTE. So, the one caveat is that it's AT&T's LTE service, which, if you have coverage in your area, is pretty darn good because there's not a lot of folks on the AT&T network, LTE network, I should say, these days. Not a lot of AT&T LTE-capable phones yet. But, you know, the Lumia took a bad rap by a lot of folks in the press. We were a little bit kinder to it, more kind, I guess, and you know, we actually like the handset. It's a well-built, very sturdy, solid smartphone, and it has a really nice 4.3-inch clear black OLED display. A little bit lower res than we would like, 800 by 480 resolution. But overall, a really nice phone, a really solid feeling, well-built phone as well.
You know, one of the big complaints I've had about this phone, and I've read this too, if this is supposed to be Microsoft and Nokia's collaboration on a phone, there's really not a whole lot to this phone that makes it different or just special compared to the rest of the Windows Phone stuff. Because Windows Phone is meant to be uniform on every device. There's not a whole lot of tweaking with the Nokia partner. Is there an experience you found that made this phone special?
Well, you know, there's some subtleties that I think are different about this phone that you don't get on many other handsets. Things like a camera photo shutter button. There's actually a button on the side of the phone that actually allows you to snap a picture. You know, not as common these days on smartphones. Usually are tapping on the screen to take a picture or tapping to focus and then take a picture. So that's one thing. Really nice 8-megapixel camera. Probably takes photos about as good as any high-end Android phone we've seen in the market. Really nice camera, actually. You know, but I guess what's sort of more important in the Lumia is Mango 7.5, Windows Phone 7 Mango, and it's actually just a very smooth UI. If you ever picked up a Windows Phone, the early iterations of Windows Phone 7 devices, they were pretty good. I mean, there's one thing that the UI is very fluid, switching between apps and tiles and going between screens and getting access, quick access, fewer screen touches to get to applications. But 7.5 even, has more polish on top of that. And so you get things like, better Facebook integration, a little bit, more polished feel to it. What else can we tell you? There's some new services that are in here as well. They've got Local Scout, which is a little bit like Yelp. So if you're looking for, the latest food suggestions in your area, I want to find the best pizza, based on my GPS location, that will, provide a service for you. There's some other features in here too, but really it's the handset itself, and I guess the polish to the product, the high quality feel of it, and for the price, it's actually really, a solid option. I think where are we at? It's on contract for $99. So, not too bad. It's actually a fairly solid offering. We think it took a bit of a bad rap in some of the press, but we liked it. And, as in terms of Windows Phone 7 devices in the market these days, it's about as good as you can get. We'd like to see it on some other networks. Certainly it would be nice if Verizon picked this up, or maybe Sprint. AT&T is an option that not everybody can appreciate. But other than that, pretty darn good smartphone.
I don't know. I find Windows Phone 7.5 a disappointment. It can't support dual core processors. It's got that one resolution of 800 by 480, I think it is, and that's what all the phones have. So even if you have a larger screen, you still have that same resolution. So you have a consistent experience, but you're not getting any extra pixels if you have a larger screen. It just seems like this device is not going to be like Windows Phone 8 ready when that shows up sometime later this year, because I'm pretty sure that device or that OS is going to basically cripple something like the 900, because that thing only costs about $200 to build, and it's effectively last year's technology crammed into a phone for this year. I'm frustrated, very frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying about the hardware, about the processor and the technology under the hood. But I mean, have you actually picked up the phone and used it and operated it? You'll see that it doesn't have an issue with responsiveness, and that's really what it's all about, is the experience. The other thing is the clear black OLED display in this thing. Again, lower resolution, no question about it, than some of the really high-end smartphones in the market. But guess what? It's pretty darn gorgeous. The contrast ratio in this display is super sharp, and so it's actually a very high-quality display, albeit fewer pixels on that 4.3-inch real estate, no question about it. And I totally agree. It would be nice to see Microsoft step up their game here and get a multi-core processor support in Windows Phone, the next iteration of Windows Phone. So we'll see what happens. But about as good as you can get these days. And I feel your pain on the geek side of things and not having the most current hardware under the hood.
Yeah, it's definitely a complaint, because really the consumer's not going to notice the difference. But I know our audience can appreciate the fact that it's kind of old hardware. Let's move on to some more fun, way more fun hardware as far as I'm concerned. It's this tiny Zotac Nano XS. Is it AD11 Plus? Is that what it's called? Marco, this is a tiny, effectively an HTPC as far as I'm concerned. And when I saw the image of the device, I thought something was out of scale. I saw the HDMI port and I saw the USB. I'm like, why are they so large on the device? Then it took me a second to go, no, you dummy. Those are the standard size ports. This is just a really, really tiny PC.
Exactly. Before I pick up the Nano, show everybody, I just want to make a quick comment about Windows Phone. I'm a hardware snob, so I feel the same way. I wish that there were Windows phones that could differentiate with high-end hardware and compete with some of the other devices out there. But the flip side to that is Microsoft has created a very streamlined mobile OS that simply doesn't need it at this point. So, Microsoft takes a lot of flack for their bloated desktop OSs and their bloated apps, whether that's true or not or just perception. where they've gone the complete opposite direction on Windows Phone. So when the next gen does come and there is, newer, more powerful hardware, expect a really, really slick experience. But, that's just my prediction. So back to the Nano XS. Here it is. Here's that little bad boy.
That is ridiculous.
4.7 inches. When we looked at the first Nano a few months ago, you and I had an argument because I said it was a palm-sized PC, and you said, well, it doesn't really fit in the palm. This one, however, there you go.
There's no argument here. That is a tiny
PC, right?
That is a
you
tiny.
get big palms though, big hairy palms, I might add.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, yes, I shaved them before the show. So,
go ahead.
One more cool little thing. Despite being tiny and really highly integrated, Zotac makes it really easy to work on these things. Just unscrew the bottom, and what you see in there, here is a 64 gig SSD. Here's the RAM that's included. On the other side of the board is AMD's top-of-the-line E-Series APU. It's an E450, so a very slight upgrade from the previous gen's E350. The integrated GPU is also a notch better. It's the Radeon HD 6320 versus the 6310. But yeah, Zotac has done... I think they made some really smart decisions with this device. With the previous gen, Nano Plus, I kind of knocked them for including a slow hard drive. I wish they included more RAM. So with this one, what they did, it still only has 2 gigs in the Plus model, so it would be nice if there was 4. But having this SSD, it's not very high capacity. It's only 64 gigs. But since this thing's going to be streaming most of the time, I think that was a wise choice. You get, a really responsive experience. You don't get a ton of space, but since you're streaming, you don't really need it. And how they shrunk this thing even smaller is Zotac's kind of just gotten rid of some of the stuff that was built in before. The integrated wireless is gone. It comes with a USB Wi-Fi adapter if you need it. They've also ditched the DisplayPort output, and it just has HDMI. I don't think many people are using this for DisplayPort. I think that was another smart move to shrink it down. You have a card reader right on the front. Just built-in infrared too. It comes with an IR extender if you need to use it, but the media center remote that comes with it will work with the IR sensor right here. Just a really cool small HTPC.
Now, with the HDMI out, do you get 5.1 audio out of that thing? Because I know that some machines don't do that, but this one does.
Yes, it does.
Okay, because I thought the port placement was kind of strange because there's a mic port and there's a headphone out, which also I believe is an optical audio out. That's on the front of the device.
On the front, it's got the optical SP diff out should you need to use it, but you do get the audio through HDMI.
Yeah. So how did it actually perform? The thing is, you put in an SSD in there. You have an AMD APU in there. Can it do 1080p video without hiccups? Can it do Flash 1080p without it just getting crushed? Because when you have something that small and you're basically streaming everything off of another server, probably on your wired network, how did it do?
So on the wired network. Definitely the preferred way to go. I tested a ton of different media streaming from a NAS, running local, running off USB, or from the web. So anything I streamed local or from the NAS via the wired connection, basically flawless. I was using CyberLink Power DVD to play my MKVs and other stuff. Worked no problem. That software will leverage the integrated GPU. Streaming stuff from the web wired was also fairly good. I did have some issues with some Flash video, but what's interesting is it's a driver issue, and it's a way Flash is implemented on some sites. 1080p YouTube video full screen, no problem. Worked fine, didn't drop any frames. You saw utilization sometimes peak in the 60% range, so you couldn't really do anything else, but the video stayed smooth. With a site like Hulu, however, streaming SD content, so it wasn't even HD content. If I streamed SD content and I scaled it full screen, it would drop frames. It didn't work perfectly. But if I scaled that window down smaller and smaller, CPU utilization scaled downward as well, and it got smooth eventually. So I still think AMD's got some driver work to do. I don't know if you've noticed, but Flash Player has just been updating like every week for me on my machine. So I think there's still some software issues to work out to make sure hardware acceleration stays enabled at all times. But generally, I think most people are going to be really happy. Plus, for $359 for basically a full HD PC, I think that's awesome. If you were to try to build your own with similar specs, it's about the same price. and a mini ITX rig is like what 5 or 6 times the size. So I think Zotac deserves a little kudos for that little guy.
As an aside, it drives me nuts that effectively you do need a computer to watch like any content, because you have to, if it's on a browser, it works in Flash. At least you can watch it that way. If you downloaded it on iTunes or Amazon or Vudu, actually I don't know if Vudu's got a web player, but sometimes you need an actual computer so you can watch all of the content you actually own. And it just that kind of drives me nuts. But for $359, that sounds like a good deal. I want to get that. I know you got to install your own OS. And I'm all for that, because why not? I'm sure I have a copy of Windows 7 just laying around somewhere. Media Center.
Make it a box.
Well, it doesn't even have to be Windows 7. There's OSs, the name's escaping me. I think it's like OpenELEC or something like that. You can download an OS an open source OS that communities are optimizing for these Zotac boxes that actually fits on an SD flash card. Just plug it in, run it right from there. Keep the internal SSD for your own storage. It's just a really cool little device. I like it a lot.
That sounds interesting. I forgot about that. You could do all kinds of different operating systems that could take advantage of the hardware. Because I know they're doing that with Raspberry Pi. There's a special version of XMBC that they're writing for that. So exciting stuff in HTPC land. I'm thrilled, because I have some aging machines that need to get kicked out. I'm looking at you, Del Vostro. That's right. Let's move on to the Intel PCIe SSD that'll cost you an arm and a leg. Because there's a 400 gigabyte and an 800 gigabyte. And the second you know an SSD that has that capacity, you're probably gasping at the price. But first, before we even talk about the price, let's talk about the actual SSD. Dave, what's the deal with these massively large SSDs?
Yeah, as Intel would like to say, they coined the marketing slogan, no spin, all grin. And this is their, a little corny there, I might add. This is their effort in the PCI Express SSD space, and it is a pretty darn good first effort. We actually saw, Marco, if you recall, a couple of years back at an Intel developers forum, we actually saw a PCI Express-based Intel SSD that never made it to market. But this is the real deal. It is now available, and it is actually a combination of Intel 25 nanometer flash, as well as 4 co-developed, jointly developed SSD controllers with SAS interface technology on them, co-developed with Hitachi. So these are Hitachi Intel SSD controllers on board, interfacing to the memory. And on the back end, interfacing to the PCI Express bus, a BY-8 Gen 2 connection to be exact, is an LSI PCI Express to SAS bridge. And so a little combination of multiple technologies from different ecosystem partners, as Intel likes to call them, add up to what can be a pretty darn fast solution for the enterprise. And there's no question this is either a very high-end workstation or enterprise class high endurance product. And so max read of 2 gigs per second, max write of 1 gig per second, and Intel actually allows you to adjust voltages, believe it or not, up and down to either increase your performance by upping the voltage or reducing the voltage and reducing your power consumption, obviously. And it also rolls back a little bit of the performance of the device. But pretty impressive stuff by Intel, no question about it.
Or shall we now hit the audience with the price of these two devices? Because they're not they're not for the faint of heart. It's one of those, if you got to ask, you probably can't afford it.
Yeah, it's not the most expensive, I will say, PCI Express SSD that I've seen. I mean, the folks at Fusion IO and LSI have waived $5,000 to $7,000 PCI Express cards in the 200 gig range capacity-wise. So these drives from Intel actually go for $1,929 for the 400 gig and $3,859. Only $3,859 for the 800 gig drive. So yeah, you're not going to be sticking this in your your desktop and gaming on it, but it's definitely, if you need this kind of throughput and performance, these types of products, PCI Express based SSDs in general, they can deliver.
I think you just ended up selling some by accident because the price anchoring of they normally cost $5,000 to $8,000, but you can get it for under $2,000.
I'm not selling anything.
That's what it sounded like. It's like Intel's they're just
But
laughing.
wait, there's more.
If you act now, we'll throw in this juicer. I don't know why.
You know, if you comparatively, if you look at the folks at OCZ, they've got a number of products that drop in significantly lower. If you want something that's a little bit more consumer class, there's the Revo Drive series, and then there's the Z Drive R4 series by OCZ. And so, you know, Intel's sort of in the middle here in terms of price points. They're not the super high end, crazy high end, but this is really also again a high endurance product that's designed to be, you know, plugged into a web server or, you know, a high transaction server, and just going 24/7, getting banged on it. And you know, NAND flash in general, you need to you know, mitigate you know, write amplification and other sorts of issues that, you know, affect the life expectancy of a NAND cell. And so Intel's baked a lot of technology into the drive to you know, make it a high endurance, long life product that also offers blistering performance of a PCI Express based SSD. But yeah, you know, you're gonna sell a kidney if you want one. It's really for the big iron guys rather than the average end user.
On to Marco playing cowboy. Apparently, he had a roundup of motherboards. I think they were just kind of like roaming around the streets, and he decided to lasso them and put them into a ranch. I don't really know why he had to do this, but there's a big roundup of motherboards. The Z77 motherboard roundup, actually. What could you tell me about this? Because obviously, you didn't actually round them up so much as you tested them.
No, I did. I borrowed Babe the pig, and he rounded them up and brought them into the, you know, he gated them for me, and then I brought them inside and tested them. Seriously. No,
he roped them doggies.
So the Z77 chipset is Intel's new, you know, upper mainstream chipset. It's kind of laying the foundation for the upcoming Ivy Bridge processors. It's very similar to the Z68. Let me just pick up a board here. This is the Asus P8Z77. This was the most expensive board in the roundup, but also the most feature-rich board that we feature there. The Z77 uses the same socket 1155 as the Z68 did for Sandy Bridge. There's three kind of new updates with this chipset. One is the PCI Express lanes. They offer a flexible configuration with support for Thunderbolt. It also has integrated USB 3, and the third thing is official support for Ivy Bridge, although some Z68 boards will also support Ivy Bridge.
Now, these are the motherboards that only had two USB 3 ports on them by default?
It's two, you know, I believe it's 4 total on the chipset. Give me 2 seconds to double check. I do not want to say the wrong thing.
I think
the
you were right
chipset
there, sir.
itself has, excuse me, 4 USB 3 ports native to the chipset. You'll see mostly 2 on the back and probably a header for internal or front mounted. But some of the boards have additional USB 3 controllers as well. Like, I don't know if you can see the colors on here. This Asus board, there's 6 USB 3 ports on the back.
Oh, wow.
Plus, there's a header here for more, you know, if you want to have front mounted. So there's plenty of USB 3 connectivity with most of the boards.
I think I was mixing it up with the first. This isn't the first round of Z77s, is it?
This is the first round. You know,
yeah.
It's been one of the worst kept secrets. We showed the boards back in January. Multiple people have leaked benchmarks already. So it's part of the reason we did a roundup early. Normally they launch a chipset with a CPU, but this thing's just been all over the place. So I said, you know what, screw it. Let's just do a nice big roundup right out of the gate.
Were there any surprises that you found with these things, or they all perform comparably?
Well, they all perform similarly. The thing with modern PCs is all the functionality that used to be in a Northbridge is now on the CPU. So as long as the boards are working properly, they should perform similarly because, you know, I use the same CPU to test them all. Same CPU, same RAM, same graphics card. So they should offer similar performance. What I did find is a few of the boards had much lower power. The MSI board in the Roundup had, nice low power characteristics. The worst board in the Roundup in terms of power was the Intel built board. I haven't gotten an answer as to why from Intel. I wrote and asked for clarification. It's probably just slight variations in voltage and the integrated peripherals on there. In terms of performance, there's not much to differentiate. The one area where they are all very different is with their BIOS or UEFI interfaces. Used to be every board had that plain blue award or AMI BIOS screens, just text and you click through with your arrow keys. All of these have graphical user interfaces that for the UEFI that work with a mouse. And they're very, very different. I have some pictures and screenshots of each one. The Asus UEFI is probably the most refined. Surprisingly, Intel really went hardcore and have tons of features in the BIOS for their Z77 board. So lots of stuff to check out. If you're gonna purchase one in preparation for Ivy Bridge or just want to upgrade your current Sandy Bridge system and maybe get an Ivy Bridge CPU later, with these boards it's probably all about the features that you want because performance-wise they're similar. So find the board with the features that you want. And then, go from there. I kind of copped out in the conclusion. I sort of recommended them all because there's enough of a price variation, to justify the different features on each. If you want something really streamlined, the MSI board was the way to go. If you want something with everything but the kitchen sink integrated, the Asus board would be my preference.
I'm waiting for the one that has the kitchen sink built into it still.
Yes.
So, and the one that there's been confusion on the Asus board on the web. Down here, there is a header labeled TB header. This is the only board I know of that will have a Thunderbolt expansion card, and it will be real Thunderbolt, not the old Thunderbolt card Asus sold that had a killer NIC and audio. It will actually have Thunderbolt ports when the card hits the market in a few weeks.
Oh, I'm just so excited about Thunderbolt. I am. I really am because of this video, just getting just crazy. NAB is going on right now, and there's these crazy cameras out there that can output raw like 2.5K. This is something that's actually from Blackmagic, completely off topic, but it runs through Thunderbolt and it captures raw, crazy resolution video. And I have no reason to have video for that. There's no way I could edit it. I don't even have a display that could view it. But
I'm wondering what you do with that content exactly.
In the long, I think it's for like the future. Like, in 10 years I can
think of something.
Yeah,
that's the future. I love the future. But yeah, it's always stuff's happening with Thunderbolt. So if you actually are curious about that stuff, like I am, that's the motherboard you want to get. So that's awesome. Let's talk about a contest. Is there actually a contest now?
I want a motherboard with a margarita port. That's what I want.
You work on that. You could, I think that's the Jimmy Buffett line.
Yeah, we've got some contest stuff going on. But before we go there, just real quick, I want to plug a couple other quick things. Marco's got WD's Velociraptor 1 terabyte 10K RPM hard drive review up. You got to check that out. Blazing fast 1 terabyte drive, standard spinning hard drive. Roughly 2x the performance of your average 7200 RPM drive. And the thing is just, it's nice. It's expensive, $319, but, for 1 terabyte, you're still talking 30 cents a gig versus a couple of $3 a gig for an SSD. So, something to check out. And then the other thing is, Marco and I, we will let you know. Stay tuned in the weeks ahead. We are playing with Ivy and Trinity in the lab and having lots of fun. So we'll leave it at that. Ivy Bridge and AMD's Trinity are in house. So little tease there for you. And then contests.
Hold on one sec. It may or may not be under this heatsink.
It may or may not. Okay.
Marco, why don't you tell them about the contest? You want to tell them about the contest?
I'm going to tell them quick because we've been teasing them enough. There are going to be 2 Asus Transformer Primes with docks being given away very, very soon. We're just trying to align with something NVIDIA's working on. The details have not been hammered out, but we are going to give away two tablets soon enough. Sorry to keep teasing you guys. They are coming, we promise.
Just mercilessly teasing the audience. But they're worth it. Trust me. This particular tablet got my interest a long time ago. It's almost, I would believe, it could almost replace a laptop if you're willing to work with it. I still think it's awesome.
It is a great machine, and we're waiting for our friends from NVIDIA to get ready on the marketing side, but they've already set aside 2 of them, so it's definite. Stay tuned. We will tease you no longer very soon.
You want to tease them about other contests? Future contests?
No, not at
yet.
this juncture.
Okay, not yet. One day we will stop teasing you, and you will know. And you know where you can find out first? I bet you can find it out at HotHardware.com. I'm pretty sure you guys are going to actually put up a post about it. It's just a guess. Maybe. Good chance of that.
You're smart.
Yeah, there you go. Also, obviously, everything we talked about is available at Hot Hardware. So if you want to like find out about the roundup, and you want to actually read the specs and see the performance tests on the Z box, or if you want to see the glorious pictures of the Lumia 900 or the pictures that they were taken by the 900, they're on the site. But if you want to go around the web and you're like, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else and I still want Hot Hardware content, we got you covered. Check out youtube.com/hothardwarevids for videos, because that's awesome. Or you can go to twitter.com/hothardware or dig.com/hothardware or facebook.com/hothardware. I just messed with the order. Look at that. I changed it up today. See,
You're crazy.
I know. I'm a wild man today. It is crazy.
Silly freak.
New microphone, new order. It's madness.
Chaos.
Hardware madness. Well, organized chaos. It's very, very orderly, if you'd believe that. Anyway, that does it for us, I think, this week. Is there anything else anyone would like to say?
Have a pleasant evening.
Yes.
You as well. So long, farewell, Auf Wiedersehen, goodbye. Thank you for stopping by.